Hello everyone, welcome back to Events That Shaped Us. I have an amazing story for you guys today. The story name is The Long Way Back. After 15 years of marriage, Lauren told Marcus the four words no husband ever wants to hear. I love you like a friend. What followed was the devastating unraveling of intimacy, resentment, and a marriage that had quietly been dying for years. Marcus didn't yell, didn't run. He made a calculated, painful decision to go completely cold. This is the raw, unfiltered story of the sleepless nights, the financial confrontations, the therapy sessions. The truth hits like a freight train. If you have ever felt invisible in your own relationship, this story will hit different. Stay to the end, because the coffee shop conversation in week 9 changed everything. Let's get in the story. Part 1. The Invisible Years. Marcus didn't notice when his wife stopped seeing him as a man. That was the worst part. It happened slowly, like water carving stone. By the time he grasped what happened, years had already slipped away. He and Lauren grew up on the same block in Columbus, Ohio. They were 14 when they were first met, first held hands under the bleachers at Jefferson's Middle School. By 16, they were inseparable. At 19, before they really lived, they became parents. 2 kids, no money, and an apartment that smelled like rust and cheap paint. They built a life out of sheer stubbornness, and long time Marcus was proud of that. He was proud of what they had survived together. Then, somewhere in the blur of diapers, double shifts, and sleepless nights, Lawrence stopped reaching for him. He told himself it was fatigue. He told himself it was stress. He told himself those things a man tells himself when the truth is too heavy to bear. 3 years. That was how long the silence in their bed lasted. 3 years since she had touched him with any tenderness. 3 years since he felt like a husband and not just a utility paycheck, a handyman, a co-signer on her life. When they finally began couples therapy, Marcus sat in that beige office chair with his hands folded in his lap, like a man waiting for a verdict. And Lauren, quiet, careful. Lauren looked like therapist in the eye and said the words that changed everything. I am not in love with him anymore. I love him, but it's platonic. He's my best friend, that's all. The room didn't shake, no thunder, no dramatic collapse. Just silence. And Marcus sat perfectly still, afraid that he moved even slightly, something inside him would shatter. Later that evening, after the kids were in bed, Lauren added more. She said she had built up resentment. She felt like Marcus always more present for the children than for her. She said she had started, and here she paused, carefully choosing her words, thinking about other men. Marcus didn't yell, didn't throw anything. He went to the garage, sat on a paint bucket in the dark, and stared at the wall for 40 minutes. He had absolutely no idea what to do next. Part 2. The breaking point. The night arrived unexpectedly. Lauren came home well after midnight. Her heels wobbled on the hardwood floor, and her voice that had loose, liquid quality that alcohol brings to everything. She found Marcus still awake in the kitchen. He hadn't been able to sleep. Leaning against the doorframe, she looked at him in a way she hadn't in a long time. She wanted closeness and was direct about it, almost startlingly so. Marcus said no. Something in him held back a wounded protective instinct he hadn't realized was there until that moment. She pressed on, starting gently but growing more urgent. Eventually he gave in. 15 years of loving someone doesn't just fade away. The next morning she woke up and told him she felt disgusted with herself. Not with him, but with herself. She reminded him, for what felt like the 15th time, of a rule she had held since childhood. She never slept with friends. In her mind, that was that it became a friend with mom. She had crossed a line. She told him she only wanted companionship now, a co-parenting arrangement. 2 adults raising 2 kids under one roof while living parallel lives that occasionally crossed paths. He asked her, his voice steady but his hands shaking, what it was about him that she found unattractive. What could he change? What was wrong? She took a long time to answer. I don't know, she said quietly. I genuinely don't know. The response that might have been the hardest thing she had ever said to him. It offered nothing to fix, no villain, no fatal flaw, just uncertainty. Part 3. What the therapist uncovered. Their therapist was a careful woman. She was patient and had a talent for helping people to reveal things that they didn't realize they were holding, until they were suddenly aware of them. In one important session, she shifted the focus to their history. She pointed out the heavy experiences that Marcus and Lauren had shared. 15 years of marriage, together since they were 14, children at 19, poverty, isolation, a decade spent prioritizing their small kids while their own identities quietly faded into background. Lauren's expression changed when the therapist asked her to step away from her role as a mother for a moment and speak just as Lauren, the individual, not Lauren the parent. What she expressed was raw and genuine. She felt angry about the life hadn't lived. She was not upset about the children. She was clear about that. She was upset about the friends she had lost, the social life they never established, and the years that slipped away before she could figure out who she was beyond being a wife and a mother. Marcus listened intently. Then he asked the question that felt most vital. Do you think, he said, the part of the resentment might be connected to me? Because I was there when it started. Because I was the one who got you pregnant at 19. She didn't reply right away. When she did, her voice was quiet. Yes, but I also know that's not fair because it takes two. I can't blame you for something we both caused. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was honesty. In that office, honesty held more value than any comfort. By the end of the session, they had identified something worthwhile to work on. Laura needed friends. She needed to exist as a person outside of her family. That had been missing for years. They agreed cautiously, tentatively to focus on those connections, both together and separately. But when Marcus asked directly about her plans to their marriage, the intimacy, the future, Lauren's answer was the same as always. She didn't know. She didn't want to be close to him in that way. She felt guilty about it. She loved him deeply, just not in the way he needed. Marcus left that office with a decision made. Part 4. The 118 Rule. This situation certainty is not same kind for manipulation. It's a conscious decision to stop bleeding to injury for someone who can't even be bothered to notice the injury. Marcus came back from his last therapy session and told Lauren that things were quiet and told her that things were going to be different. He didn't say it angrily or lash out. He just simply stopped being available to her, in ways she had taken for granted. He stopped doing her things for her, and his answers to her questions became shorter and shorter. He stopped reaching out for her, in every sense of word, in every way that characterized 15 years of his life. He started concentrating on himself. This meant to gym, old friendships, the parts of his identity that he had started to lose or hold. Lauren's response didn't take any long. Within days, she was clearly agitated. She called him whiny, she called him emotionally distant, she described him like he was embodiment of winter. She cried genuinely, and not as a tactic, and told him that she couldn't put her finger on it, that she didn't feel like she knew him anymore, and his emotional distance and indifference was frightening her. He listened and said calmly as he could, "This is the dynamic you describe. I'm just living in it." When Marcus sent her a text separating their finance equally, splitting every bill down to the middle, as friends would, she erupted, told him it was out of nowhere, it wasn't fair. He responded, "Friends split things evenly. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for." She didn't have a rebuttal for that, because he was right. They both know it. The distance was agonized for him. Every instinct Marcus had screamed at him to reach out, to comfort her, to close the gap, but he resisted. Because he had finally understood something crucial. His constant availability had made him invisible. His reliability had made him easy to overlook. He wasn't going to be overlooked anymore. Week after week, the distance did this work. Lauren started seeking him out. She initiated conversations. She asked about his day. She began making time for herself, not just a mother, but as a person. She called an old friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Marcus watched all of this and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Not a desperate, clinging kind, the quiet, earned kind. Part 5. The Coffee Shop. 9 weeks after they started the 118, Lauren asked him to get coffee. Just the two of them, on a Saturday morning while the kids were at practice. She wanted to talk. Marcus said yes. His hands were steady, but his heart was not. They sat across from each other in a corner booth at a place called Juniper. Morning light through the windows, 2 ceramic mugs between them. And Lauren talked for a long time. She talked about her fears, her failures, the loneliness she had been carrying and refusing to name. She talked about what she had learned about herself in therapy. She talked about who she wanted to become. And then she said something Marcus hadn't heard from in her years. I need your help. I don't want you to do this alone. Something unlocked in him. Not completely. He was careful, deliberate, too acquainted with disappointment to let go all at once, but something moved. He told her he loved her, that he had always loved her, but his goal now and going forward was still for them to find their way back to each other, but that he would not do it at the cost of himself. He explained the distance of the past weeks not a punishment, but as a protection. He was learning, finally, to take care of his own heart. They talked for 3 hours. When it was over, they hadn't fixed everything. They both knew that. But they had built something new, a framework. A set of agreements made out obligation or fear, but out of genuine desire. They established that each of them was responsible for their own happiness, that they would communicate needs openly, without expecting the minds to be read, and that they would build toward each other, not because they had to, but because they chose to. And they set a deadline, Memorial Day 2025, 1 year from that morning. Enough time to do the work honestly. And at the end of it, they would each ask themselves the question, am I happy here? If the answer was yes, from both of them, they had keep building. If not, they would part with clear consciousness, knowing they had left nothing undone. As they walked to their cars, Lauren stopped and looked at him. I see you differently, she said. I don't fully understand it yet, but something's changing. Marcus nodded. He didn't say anything. Words felt too small for that moment. On the drive home, he let himself really feel everything he had been holding back. The grief, the exhaustion, the tentative, fragile thing that still might be love rebuilding itself from the wreckage. He didn't know how the story ended, but for the first time in years, he believed it might end with him standing. And sometimes, in the long, brutal work of saving a marriage, that is enough to begin. Thank you for watching. Take care, guys. See you. Bye-bye.